long time now what's happening in the Holy Land. We know it because we've been studying Islamic eschatology. Only Islamic eschatology can explain the reality of events which have been unfolding in the Holy Land, in the state of Israel. And if you do not understand and penetrate the reality of a situation, how can you respond to it? So, the first thing I have to say in response to the events that have been taking place in Jerusalem and in Gaza is that I have to ask you, if you have not as yet done your homework, if you have not as yet done your homework and you're full of spirit, you want to respond, to do your homework first. And that means to go to the Qur'an, primarily the Qur'an, and then to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, to understand the events which have been unfolding in the Holy Land for at least 100 years or more now. And my book, Jerusalem in the Qur'an, which was written 20 years ago, would be beneficial for you. If you want to know how to respond to what's happening in the Holy Land, why don't you begin by reading that book? But in addition to that pioneering work, Jerusalem in the Quran, I have now written several more books on Islamic eschatology, all of them centered on Jerusalem. So that's my first response. Before you jump up to take a sword to travel to Jerusalem, to liberate Jerusalem, I ask of you to do your homework first and do some studies in this subject, in Mu'akhir Zaman, or Islamic eschatology, in which Jerusalem has center place. When you do that, you will understand that what is unfolding in the Holy Land has been explained in the Quran. And I have offered that explanation. But unfortunately, while there are so many of you, the young ones, who have easily understood what the Quran was saying and have accepted it and are moving on, the world of Islamic scholarship, the Maulanas, the Muftis, the Shuyukh, and the university-educated Islamic scholars adamantly, obstinately, resolutely refuse to accept my views on Gog and Magog. And that's where you start. That is where you start. If you want to respond to what is happening in Jerusalem, you got to study Gog and Magog. Otherwise, you're going to end up like Tipu Sultan and Saddam Hussein. If you do not study Gog and Magog in the Quran, you cannot understand what's happening in the Holy Land. So get to work and study Gog and Magog. And when you do that, you recognize the status and the role, the origin, the status and the role of modern Western civilization. You will understand the alliance between Christians and Jews, who are all Zionists, within the heart of modern Western civilization. You will understand why Allah has prohibited you in the Quran from maintaining friendly ties and being allies of that Judeo-Christian alliance which has NATO as its military arm. And then you'll understand, if we're not allowed to have friendly relations and being allies of modern Western civilization, how come all of us are members of the International Monetary Fund? When Allah has prohibited in the Quran, how come Pakistan is still a member of the International Monetary Fund, a member state? And Iran is a member state of the IMF, and every single Muslim country, member state of the IMF. Now then, the IMF was designed to put a rope around your neck And the IMF has already succeeded magnificently so in putting a rope around the necks of every Muslim country. They did not lend you money just to make money and become rich. When will you understand? Why don't you read Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins? They lent you money in order to put a rope around your neck. That's why they gave you loans. And they don't want you to get rid of that rope around your neck. So they will do everything to ensure that you cannot escape. When will you understand? That you don't have the freedom to respond, because if you do this, they'll attack your money and the money will go down in value and the whole economy will be crumbling. Runaway inflation, that's what they did in Venezuela when Hugo Chavez stood up to resist them. That's what they did in Zimbabwe when Robert Mugabe stood up to resist them. That's the weapon they have. It's the most dangerous weapon of all that they have, to deny you your freedom. A slave country cannot wage war. A slave country cannot liberate Jerusalem. No matter if you have nuclear weapons in Pakistan, you can't wage any war over a long period of time, maybe a day or two. You cannot wage war, you cannot liberate a land when you have this sword hanging over your head, that if you make one step of defiance, your money will crumble. Your economy will go berserk. You can't wage war like that. So if you want to respond to them and you want to be faithful to the Qur'an, the long-term process is to recover your freedom. Let me repeat that. If you want to liberate Jerusalem, you have to first recover your freedom. Russia has done it. They tried to make Russia their slave. Yes, they did. But Russia has not become their slave. Russia is a free country. That's why Russia could stand up and resist them. China is a free country. China could stand up and resist them. China is not a slave. So then what do we do if we want to respond to the oppression in Jerusalem, the oppression in the Holy Land? It's not just to pick up a sword and jump up. That's another way to respond to liberate Jerusalem. So wake up, my little school.